guys, welcome to my channel where we talk about all things true crime, crazy and unknown historical events, ghost phenomena, and more. I also travel to and explore some of the locations that I discuss, so if any of that is of interest to you, please consider hitting the subscribe button so you can join me on my upcoming adventures. Also be sure to hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Today's video dives into, yet again, the mysterious side of life, and has quite an extensive amount of research and other material discussing this specific topic. For the reason of not having an extremely long video, I am only going to be skimming the surface of this phenomenon, but I will leave all of the resources that I used for my research down in the description below, so be sure to check out all of those links. Over the years, people have mysteriously gone missing from some of America's national parks, seemingly out of thin air. And in some cases, the person is found in bizarre areas of the park, miles away from their original location. This phenomenon has been dubbed as the Missing 411 by David Paulides, a former police officer who is now an investigator and writer, known primarily for his self-published books dedicated to this phenomenon and many others. David has classified over 1,400 missing persons cases under the Missing 411 label. In this video, I will be discussing some of the popular theories that seem to be passed around, plus tell a Missing 411 story to show just how peculiar this occurrence is. Over the years, David has never outwardly discussed any signs that point to why this phenomenon occurs, but as the theory gets more and more well known, people have come up with their own theories. The most well-believed theory being aliens or Bigfoot. The problem with the Bigfoot theory is that in almost all of the cases, the person disappears out of thin air, meaning they would have footprints leading down the trail and then they would just abruptly stop out of nowhere with no sign of other footprints or even a struggle. Even dogs can't find a scent trail in most of the cases, so this leads people to believe the alien theory even more. This theory also piggybacks off the idea that national parks are a hotspot for UFO activity, but due to no definitive answers, we may never know. In 1999, a 3-year-old boy named Jared Ottadero was living with his father Alan and his sister at the resort Jared's father worked at in the Comanche Wilderness, which is a national park in Colorado. A Christian singles group was staying at the resort at this time, and one of the women in the group offered to take Alan's kids with them for a few hours to a local fish hatchery. They never asked Alan if they could take the children hiking as well. However, they did see a sign for a nearby trail and decided last minute to go. The group became distracted by the beauty of their surroundings, and they lost track of Jared. 2 hikers in the area claimed that they saw him walking alone, but assumed that his parents must be somewhere nearby. After this, though, he was never seen alive again. In 2003, 2 hikers climbed up a very steep rock face, roughly about 550 feet above the trail. On a small ledge, they found one child's tooth, a piece of skull, and Jared's clothes, which were fully intact, seemingly like Jared had just taken them off. They had been turned inside out and laid on the ledge in a heap. There was also one of his shoes, which looked brand new. Somehow it had stayed perfectly preserved for those 4 years. The area where his remains were found was far too difficult for a child to climb all by himself, and it also would have been difficult for an adult kidnapper to carry him up this ledge. It also doesn't line up with a bear or a cougar attack, because the clothes would have been ripped and possibly even covered in blood. The Ottadero family is still haunted by the unanswered questions to this day. This next story may be a little bit more well known since it did just happen back in 2018. I know I definitely had heard about it from other YouTubers, but if you haven't heard this one, it is extremely peculiar. In February of 2018, a Canadian man named Danny Philippidis was on a ski trip with his friends in New York, and they had been skiing for hours at this point, and they were ready to go back into the lodge to get some lunch. Danny, on the other hand, said that he wanted to go down the mountain at least one more time before their lunch break, but the rest of his friends headed back into the lodge. By 4 p.m., Danny still hadn't returned, and he was failing to return any calls or texts, so his friends grew increasingly concerned. They immediately started searching for him on the mountain, and after being unable to find him, they told the employees of the lodge that he was missing. Shortly after, a team of about 130 people was gathered to search the mountain, but they were still unable to find him. 6 days later, Philippidis' wife received a phone call from a number that she didn't recognize, and it sounded like it was coming from far away and a little bit staticky, but she could tell that it was Danny's voice. He was incoherent and confused, and then he hung up the phone. She then called back the number and pleaded with him to call 911 for help. So he did, but he had no idea where he was, and he was just able to describe to the dispatcher his surroundings. When paramedics finally found him, he was still wearing all of his ski gear and in need of medical assistance. To add to the peculiarities, Danny was holding a brand new iPhone, plus he had gotten a fresh haircut. Danny later learned that he had ended up in Sacramento, California. Somehow he was 3,000 miles away from his original location that he disappeared from, and he couldn't remember how he got there, nor did he know what day it even was. To this day, no one really knows what actually happened. The leading theory is that he was kidnapped in the back of a big rig truck, but no proof of this has ever surfaced. Like I mentioned earlier, another popular theory that gets tossed around is aliens.
This is the location of a missing hunter.
So it looks like people are snatched up off the ground, and then some of them are dropped back miles and miles away.
I have investigated hundreds of cases that push the limits of standard everyday police protocol. In many stories, children are right there, and then the next second they're gone. After reading thousands of reports, I started to document what is called profile points. The number one profile point is lack of scent trail. The more you hear, the stranger the story gets. How do you explain to a grieving family that something paranormal may be tied to the disappearance?
Obviously, with this theory, like many other theories with this phenomenon, there is no definitive proof. No one really knows what could be causing these anomalies. Honestly, this video could be hours long if we dived into the alien theory alone, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory. David Paulides' research is extremely sincere, factual, and thorough, and he is very respectful of the missing person in each case. He states that not all missing persons cases in national parks qualify as missing 411. David describes the pattern of these cases in his books and in the occasional radio interview, saying that the biggest clue to whether the missing person should be classified as a missing 411 or not is how far they were found from the originating location, regardless if they were found alive or deceased, because it defies all reason. Like any unknown or mysterious phenomenon, people believe that the government has some sort of knowledge of what is actually going on, if not some sort of involvement, but at the end of the day, what you choose to believe is yours to decide. Definitely leave a comment below of any other peculiar phenomena that you would like me to look into, and be sure to put a like on this video if you enjoyed watching it, so I can see what sort of content you do enjoy. Also, don't forget to check out the links down in the description below if you are interested in learning a little bit more about this phenomenon. Lastly, if you haven't already and you would like to join more of my upcoming adventures in cases, definitely consider hitting the subscribe button. I do have some planned exploration videos coming up. Unfortunately, I've had to postpone a lot of those videos due to the weather, but I promise I will be back exploring locations soon, so be sure to click the bell icon so you don't miss any of those videos. As always guys, I appreciate any and all support, and I will see you in my next upload.